What's up, everybody? So for Hanukkah, I made my own crooked-headed candlestick. Mine's inverted, though. I thought to myself, what is the absolute most difficult way that I can put a light in the kitchen? And off to the junk store I went. Does anybody know what these are called? I know it's a yoke setup, but they're always sold in two completely separate pieces that match. I epoxied the two together with a piece of all thread, but I'm curious how these were even used. If anybody knows the name of it, drop it in the comments, please. But now I've got the mellow, easy on the eyes lighting over my dirty little workspace here. So something in the last video made me think about the changelings. In old folklore, you have assorted beings like fairies, pixies, elves that would come and swap out a newborn with one of their own. And so it was a superstition that you never left a child under 6 months old alone, else the fair may get them. And the story usually goes something like this. I really wish I could do a good Irish accent, because you can tell this is just written that way, and I probably can't pronounce half these. A couple of Strathspey lads who dealt in whiskey that never paid duty, which they used to purchase in Glenlivat and sell at Badenoch and Fort William, were one night laying in stock at Glenlivat when they heard the child in the cradle give a piercing cry, just as if it had been shot. The mother, of course, blessed it, and the Strathspey lads took no further notice and soon after set out with their goods. They had not gone far when they found a fine, healthy child lying all alone on the roadside, which they soon recognized as that of their friend. They saw at once how the thing was. The fairies had taken away the real child and left a stock, but owing to the pious ejaculation of the mother, they had been forced to drop it. Yeah, we've kind of changed the way we use that word. As the urgency of their business did not permit them to return, they took the child with them and kept it till the next time they had occasion to visit Glenlivat. On their arrival, they said nothing about the child, which they kept concealed. In the course of conversation, the mother took occasion to remark that the disease which had attacked the child the last time they were there had never left it, and she had not little hopes of its recovery. As if to confirm her statement, it continued uttering most piteous cries. To end the matter at once, the lads produced the real child, healthy and hearty, and told how they had found it. An exchange was at once effected, and they forthwith proceeded to dispose of their new charge. For this purpose, they got an old creel to put them in, and some straw to light under it. Seeing the serious turn matters were likely to take, he resolved not to await the trial, but flew up the smoke hole. And when at the top, he cried out that things would have gone very differently with them had it not been for the arrival of their guests. So in this one, the woman says that some sickness had afflicted the child, and it wasn't quite acting the same way as it used to. But in a lot of them, people just come back and it's a different kid. It's not even a kid, it's a something. And what's funny about this one is they find their friend's kid on the roadside and say, "Yeah, we'd better be taking this whiskey to its rightful heir, else to get cold or something. Just bring the kid." But, this brings up a lot of questions. Who are the fairy or the pixies? They even refer to them as the underground people at times, saying they live in stone circles, which made me think of the Hypogeum in Malta, which they shut down back in like the 1920s because a whole class of school children went in and never returned, which in all fairness, it's probably an underground labyrinth. But who made it in the first place and for what purpose? Did people build it as a necropolis, or did the fairies build it? And if that's the case, then who are the fairies and why do they want to swap themselves out with human children? Now, this is what I can't stand that they've done to the internet. If you look up medieval changelings, every one of the first 20 articles is going to refer to the findings in this one book. Yeah, hey guys, we had an expert look into this, and it was autism. So that's all you need to know. Now, look, some of these cases definitely were a kid that had autism or some type of retardation. I mean, one guy was tripped out that his son had photographic memory. He could recall every single thing that he had ever read, but he was off in other ways. And it's a full-on Rain Man story. But that doesn't mean you erase every other story off the internet and only promote what is found in this one book. I mean, that's some insider trading there or something. But I can accept that some of these were things like autism. However, some of these accounts describe something completely different. There's my kid, next minute, that's not my kid. And apparently, this happened enough that some people in the village knew how to test and see if it was really your kid or if it was a replacement. One of these ways was to do something absurd and see if the fairy will laugh at it, while other methods involved getting an old creel, whatever that is, and lighting some straw under it. You better be pretty sure about what you're doing if you're going that route. So I'm going to read some more examples, and I can't help but think that the stone circles tie into all of this somehow. I've always had a feeling that these are more spiritual, magical energy in nature rather than astronomical. The following true story took place in the year 1580 near Breslau. There lived a distinguished nobleman who had a large crop of hay every summer, which his subjects were required to harvest for him. One year, there was a new mother among his harvest workers, a woman who had barely had a week to recover from her birth of her child. When she saw that she could not refuse the nobleman's decree, she took her child with her, placed it on a small clump of grass, and left it alone while she helped with the haymaking. After she had worked a good while, she returned to her child to nurse it. She looked at it, screamed aloud, hit her hands together above her head, and cried out in despair that this was not her child. It sucked the milk from her so greedily and howled in such an inhuman manner that it was nothing like the child she knew. As was usual in such cases, she kept the child for several days, but it was so ill behaved that the good woman nearly collapsed. She told her story to the nobleman. He said to her, "Woman, if you think that this is not your child, then do this one thing. Take it out to the meadow where you left your previous child and beat it hard with a switch, and then you will witness a miracle." The woman followed the nobleman's advice. She went out, and I don't think I can even read that, until it screamed loudly. Then the devil brought back her stolen child, saying, "There you have it." And with that, he took his own child away. Now, notice how the nobleman's first reaction isn't, "Oh, this poor peasant woman, she's lost her mind and thinks someone has taken her baby." No, the nobleman knew exactly what was going on, which would imply that the nobility are educated in such sorceries. Another Irish woman had thought that her baby had been swapped out. Away she took it in her arms, pretending to be mighty fond of it. All the while, a wise woman who had told her in a whisper not to give it enough to eat and to beat and pinch it without mercy, which Mary Scannell did. And in just 1 week after, to the day, when she awoke in the morning, she found her own child lying by her side in the bed. The fairy that had been put in its place did not like the usage it got from Mary Scannell, who understood how to treat the devil. You know what this means, right? It sucked to grow up Irish, because mom's crazy. But the story goes all throughout Europe. Sir Walter Scott writes, "The most formidable attribute of the elves was the practice of carrying away and exchanging children, and that of stealing human souls from their bodies. A pervasion prevails among the ignorant that in a consumptive disease the fairies steal away the soul and put the soul of a fairy in the room of it." Now that sounds kind of like doing a good thing. Along the eastern coast of Scotland, where a practice apparently of druidical origin is used to avert the danger, in the increase of the March moon, withes of oak and ivy are cut and twisted into wreaths or circles, which they preserve till next March. After that period, when persons are consumptive or children heretic, they cause them to pass thrice through these circles. There is one thing remarkable in this parish of Sudie. When children happen to be sick and languish long in their malady so that they almost turn skeletons, the common people imagine they are taken away, at least the substance, by spirits called fairies, and the shadow left with them. So at a particular season in the summer, they leave them all night themselves, watching at a distance near this well, and this, they imagine, will either end them or mend them. They say many more do recover than do not. It sounds like these guys believed in some tough medicine. If you've been sick longer than they think you should have been, then they just take you out and leave you here and say, well, either get better or you're not coming back. I don't know that one has so much to do with changelings. The fair folk were most covetous of newborn children and their mothers, till the mothers were saned and churched, and the children were baptized. The most strict watch and ward had to be kept over them to keep them from being stolen. Every 7 years, they had to pay a tithe to hell, and to save them from paying this tribute with one of themselves, they were ever on the alert to get a hold of a human infant. So in this version, the fair folk have more made a Faustian bargain and owe the devil. But in some of these cases, the women end up keeping the changeling for up to 18, 19 years, and they describe it as kind of a grotesque little monster that never grows up. A certain woman, having put her child to nurse in the country, found when she came to take it home that his form was so much altered that she scarce knew it. Nevertheless, not knowing what time might do, took it home for her own. But when, after some years, it could neither speak nor go, the poor woman was fain to carry it with much trouble in her arms, and one day a poor man coming to the door, "God bless you, mistress," he said, "and your poor child. Be pleased to bestow something on a poor man." "Ah, this child," she replied, "is the cause of all my sorrows," and related what had happened, adding moreover that she had thought it changed, and it was not her child. The old man, whom years had rendered more prudent in such matters, told her to find out the truth, she should make a clear fire, sweep the hearth very clean, and place the child fast in his chair, that he might not fall before it, and break a dozen eggs and place them before the hearth, and then go out and listen at the door. For if the child spoke, it was certainly a changeling, and then she should carry it out and leave it on the dunghill to cry, and not to pity it. The woman, having done all things according to these words, heard the child say, "7 years old was I before I came to the nurse, and 4 years have I lived since, and never saw so many milk pans before." So the woman took it up and left it upon the dunghill to cry and not to be pitied. Till at last a voice went up into the air, and coming found there her own natural and well-favored child. Now, there's quite a few weird stories with eggshells. One of them is brewing beer in eggshells. But the whole idea is kind of playing to the fairy's sense of humor in some way and just doing something ridiculous no sensible person would do. Or a lot of times, if you leave the changeling alone and it thinks it's alone, it might get up and start dancing or singing or something. Even one said, start playing the bagpipes. That's when you really know you're alone. When no one is around within earshot of you playing the bagpipes. But this folklore is found all throughout Europe once you get past the Google gatekeepers. And a lot of people have superstitions about protecting babies, especially before they're baptized. In southern Scotland, children are considered to be at the mercy of the fairies before baptism, hence it is unlucky to take them on a journey. Danish women guard their children during this period against evil spirits by placing in the cradle or over the door garlic, salt, bread, and steel in the form of some sharp instrument. And in the West Riding of Yorkshire, a child was kept safe while sleeping by hanging a carving knife from the head of the cradle with the point suspended near the infant's face. Man, I guess if you're a child, you don't know to be traumatized. Only a changeling will understand the significance of a knife hanging over your cradle. In modern Greek culture, they are careful not to leave them alone during their first 8 days, within which period the Greek church refuses to baptize them. There is an OT verse where Yahweh says you stay with your mother for the first 7 days, and then on the 8th day, you're mine or something. Paraphrasing, of course. Now, some cases could have been, like they said, it's a kid with autism or something that just never adjusted. But in all of the famous stories, the reason they're famous is because they actually got a reaction out of the changeling. One of them was said to have sucked 4 nursemaids dry. And when you take it to the nobleman and he says, well, if you don't think that's your kid, take him out there and just start whacking on him, because that's not really your kid. It's been switched out with the devil. It makes me think that the old world educated minds knew what this was. And now I'm going to have to dive deeper into fairies and elves and all that at some point. What I wonder is how many changelings have been swapped out for normal people throughout the years to where now it's half the population or better. I used to go people watch in California. I swear a lot of people aren't humans. I don't know. What do you guys think? Were there other people, other beings that would swap out with human children? Or was everybody just crazy back then? I'll catch you guys on the next one. Static out.